We did say something yesterday. People weren't here, and I just want to mention it so we're all on the same page. The Hagaddah is dedicated to telling the story of the transition from slavery to freedom. That's why in the 4 questions you have the matzah and the moreh first, which are both symbols of slavery, and then you have the dipping and the leaning, which are symbols of freedom. Rabbi asks, Pesach, the Seder, is unlike any other commemoration in the calendar, because all the other commemorations relate either to a great success or they relate to a great tragedy. Each commemoration is one-dimensional. It either has symbols of happiness, success, miracles, or it has symbols of destruction, failure, and suffering. The Pesach Seder is the only commemoration that has symbols of both. And that's what the 4 questions are designed to ask. Why are there symbols of slavery and suffering on the one hand, and also symbols of happiness, freedom, wealth on the other hand? And Rabbi now says, from the answer, which is, we were slaves to Egypt, to Pharaoh in Egypt, and Hashem took us out from there, that verse tells us the answer. The answer is that we are commemorating the transition from slavery to freedom. So, we've got one leg on the slavery side, one leg on the freedom side. We're making the transition. And that explains many other things in the Hagaddah. In particular, the Maisa with the 5 Tanoim, where they were up all night and didn't realize that the night had passed because they were reliving the transition from slavery to freedom. And this is the second point, the point of reliving it, not just retelling it, not just doing it intellectually. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, this I started yesterday and I didn't finish. He's talking about commemorating, speaking about, remembering the Exodus at night. And Ben Zoma gave him a drasha on a pasuk that supported his position. His colleagues disagree with him. They said that the point of the pasuk is to tell us that even in the times of the Messiah, we'll tell the story. We remember and mention the Exodus from Egypt. So this statement about Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is a Mishnah in Brachos, and it is describing our responsibility to remember and mention, just mention the Exodus from Egypt, daytime and nighttime, daytime in our period and the times of the Messiah. I think it's in the Hagaddah because that's not what we're doing tonight. We're not doing that. We're not mentioning and remembering. That's not what we're doing. We're reliving it. That's what makes the night different. After all, this pasuk, this mitzvah of mentioning the Exodus from Egypt, we did it in shul already. Gamarnu, forget it. It's over. The reciting of the Hagaddah is not doing that again. It's doing something quite different. Okay, that's just a recap of what we did yesterday. Now comes the 4 sons, and a gigantic amount of material on the 4 sons, as you may imagine. As I told you, my attitude here is very selective, and I'm going to use certain specific commentaries. But before we get into it, it starts with Baruch, 4 Baruchs, because there are 4 sons. Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenasan Torah D'Mo Yisrael Baruch Hu. So there's a lot here also, a lot that I don't understand, but I'll tell you the little bit I do understand. What does it mean, Baruch HaMakom? Yeah, that's a rabbinic expression designating God. Why is that? Hamakom means the place. Why would the place be a designation for God? We have it in Baruch Shamar also. We have it other places. So the Ramchal, by implication, and others explain as follows. Think of place. What is place? What does it do? What role does it play? Well, if place means space, where it says all the places are, notice that space is a prerequisite for anything physical to exist, because physical things take up space. If you had no space, you couldn't have any physical things. So makom is the possibility of physical things. You could have an empty space also. The cosmologists talk about an empty space also. But without space, you can't have any physical things. So makom vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu now becomes the fact that he creates the possibility of all other things to exist. Which means there's a process. It's not just there's nothing and then there's something. No, it's a step-by-step process. First step is to create the possibility of physical things. And after you create the possibility, then you realize that possibility and the physical things come into existence. It's a two-stage process rather than a one-stage process. So when you think, say, Ha-Makom, you're speaking of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who creates the possibility of other things to exist, and then realizes that possibility by giving those other things existence. And then he gave the Torah to the Jewish people, and then it says the Torah spoke about 4 sons. We said Baruch 4 times, now there are 4 sons. That seems to indicate that the word Baruch, blessed, giving possibility of existence, applies to all 4 sons. All 4 sons. And here they are. One is the wise son, and one is the wicked son, and one is the simple son, and the one is the son who doesn't know how to ask. Now this description of 4 types of sons raises lots of questions. Lots and lots. First of all, does this describe everybody? Is this exhaustive? Every child in the world is either wise or wicked or simple or can't ask a question? That's not obvious. Number 2, how are the categories chosen? I mean, this is part of the same thing. And how they're related to one another. And it doesn't seem like they're opposites. Wise and wicked? And then simple and can't ask? So it sounds like wise and simple and can't ask is like on one spectrum of how much understanding do they have. And then the wicked one gets in there like, not obviously what he's there for at all. Furthermore, doesn't know how to ask? Let's figure this out. The wise one could be 30 or 13. The wicked one could be any age. Simple one, how old is he? I was going to say he asks mazos. Okay, I could ask that at 18 months. Right? Now you got the one who can't ask. He's in diapers. He's 12 months old. 12 months old, but you give him an answer here. You quote a verse from the Torah to him. Something very strange is going on. Eliyahu Kitov has a wonderful answer to that question. I want to read through the passage and collect more questions, and then we'll start to answer them one by one. So, what does the wise son say? Maha'edos v'achukim v'mishpotim she'atziva Hashem Elokeinu eschem. Now, eidos this is all about commandments. Eidos are testimonies. That means commandments that testify to something else. They express something else, like the holidays. The holidays all celebrate events that took place in history. So they are eidos. I'm sorry?
Posek say Eidos be Yosef Samo in Thursday's.
That's
Shir Yom.
that's a deuce. This is a dose. But good that you thought of it. A dose is the plural of Eidah, and Eidah is like a testimony, something that tells you about something else. So that's one type of commandment. Chukim are commandments that the reason is hard to find and known only by a few. Usually people think that chukim don't have any reason. There is such a view, but it's a minority view. The majority view is that chukim are things which have reasons, but the reasons are hidden, maybe in the Kabbalah, or they're very high philosophy, and they're hard to understand, and are known only by a few. Mishpatim, according to the Gemara, are commandments that are so logical, so obvious, so moral, that had the Torah not been given, we would have known we have to do it anyway. We would have known on our own that we have to do it. So these are three different categories of commandments. One of the reasons this son is called a Chacham is that he understands that there are different types of commandments, and he wants to understand all of them. What are, he asks, these Eidos and Chukim Mishpatim that Hashem our God commanded you? Now, how should you answer him? Answer him. Now, af means even. Like the laws of the Pesach, when you eat the Paschal sacrifice, don't eat anything else afterwards. Now, the Gemara says that was the law about the Paschal sacrifice, that the taste of the Paschal sacrifice should stay in your mouth. I guess you could figure out that in all the laws of the Paschal sacrifice, this is probably the least important, the least significant. Some of the laws, if you violate them, would render it unfit. Torah, you have to bring another one, or go Pesach Sheni. Some of them would be problematic midrabanan. Some would be forbidden, and you would be punished if you violated them. This is not on that par. This is a very ethereal, and it's one that someone could easily make fun of. But we trust him because he's a chacham. He has wisdom of a certain type, and we trust him to accept it. And if it doesn't fit with his intuition, to say, okay, so it doesn't fit with my intuition, but the rabbi said so it must be real, it must be right. That's why we trust him with it. And it says, you tell him even that. Meaning, of course, you could tell him all the other ones, but even something like this, which is very minor and very comparatively less important than all the other ones, and one which your intuition might rebel against, you can tell him that as well. That's the Chacham. Now, Rasha, the wicked one. Ma ha'avoda hazos lachem. What is this service for you? And Hagaddah immediately picks up on his words. Lachem, for you. Aha, for you. V'lo lo, but he didn't include himself. He didn't say for us, all of us together, including me. No, he said for you, and not me. So he's excluded himself from this service. Because he therefore removed himself from the group. Kafar beikar. He has contradicted for a fundamental Torah principle. Not obvious what principle that is. We'll have to think about that. You should blunt his teeth, ve'emorlo, and say to him. Now pay attention to the grammar if you can. For the sake of this, a verse in the Torah. For the sake of this, Hashem did for me when I left Egypt. Leave it alone for me and not for him. Not for him. Had he been there, he wouldn't have been redeemed. Any alarm bells ringing?
Why not?
Think about it. It says again, you should blunt his teeth and say to him. You should say to him. For the sake of this, Hashem did for me when I left Egypt, for me and not for him. What should it have said?
You.
You should have said for you. You're talking to him. He's standing in front of you. It says, say to him.
So I guess you wouldn't say this last part, right? The quote. It seems like the quote would be, "Va'afata hakhe es shinav." No. You would say to him, "Bavur ze asa Hashem li b'tzeisi min Mizrayim." Period. And then stop talking, and then it explains why you say this, because for me, but not for him. Because if he would have been there, then he wouldn't have gone.
So who are you talking to now?
Well, nobody's talking. It's just kind of explaining what you should say.
But-
Could the law refer to Hashem?
Oh, you mean to say the your speech ends with the word Mitzrayim?
It seems like. That's how I read it when I was in my Pesach Seder at home.
Rabbi,
I don't know.
I don't understand the question.
if it said lo, wouldn't that be referring to Hashem?
No.
Like if it said Bavur ze asa Hashem lo,
No. Bavur Shem Li. Li, he did for me. Hashem did for me. Now we say for me and not for him.
so if he would have said for him, he would have told him lecha, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So we said not for you. Right? And then now, because it says lo, it means not for him.
But he wouldn't have said lo, he would have said lecha.
Again, who's talking here?
Isn't the father talking?
Yes, the Father is talking. So the Father is talking, and he says, for the sake of this, Hashem did for me when he took me out of Egypt. Now, the words go on. For me, and not for him. For me, and not for him. The Pasuk says, for the sake of this, Hashem did for me. And now we're saying, aha! Pasuk says, for me, and not for him. Him is the Russia, not Hashem.
So is it the father speaking?
Yeah.
So you're saying for me and not for the Russia over there?
That's right.
Okay.
Oh.
Right? But the problem is, and you put it very well, for me and not for the Russia over there. So if he's saying that, to whom is he speaking? To everybody else, to himself, soliloquy, right? Okay, but now you put it very well. For him, for me, not for him. So he can't be talking to the Russia, because if we were talking to the Russia, he should have said, "For me and not for you." So he was told, say to him something to him. So at the very least, he's got to say the verse. It's possible at the end that he turns away. These words, leave lo, Elo Hashem lo yanigal, those words are not addressed to the Russia. Because if they were addressed to the Russia, it shouldn't say lo, it should say lecha. Right? So somehow at this point, he stops talking to him. Right? Actually, you could say that from the beginning he's not talking to him, because Emer lo can mean say about him. Sometimes the Lamed Vav means about him rather than to him. Yeah.
I think a good reason if you have an answer, it's what Tanya talks about. With how if you're going to, you shouldn't define the person as Russia. So if you're going to ask how she should be responded to, and now you're going to respond back to that person, identifying him as a Russia, and not identifying, like, he's acting like a Russia, that's why I'm going to refer to him, because if I were to refer to you, you're identifying him as a Russia, and that's who he is, not how he's acting.
I don't know if I'm making it clear, because I don't see how your words are relating to what I'm trying to say. So maybe I'm just misunderstanding. Let's try it again. So Rasha makes a speech. Ma havor azos lachem. So lachem means there's a bunch of people here, right? Not just me. Let's say I'm leading the Seder, but there's a bunch of people here.
Right.
And he makes a speech addressed to everyone at the table. What is this service to all of you guys?
Right.
Okay, so the Hagaddah, the Hagaddah points out, all of you guys, he says, all of you guys means not him. He's not including himself. Others would have said to all of us. No, all of you guys. So he's putting himself on the side, and he's saying, "You guys are doing this thing. What is this thing to all of you that are doing it? Me, I'm not involved."
Right.
So the Hagaddah comments, "Aha!" He said, "Lachem," and lachem means below low. He's not including himself in the ones who are involved in this avodah, right? So therefore, since he took himself out of the group by saying what he said, he's contradicted a fundamental principle of the Jewish religion, and he's in trouble. That's the comment the text makes about him. Text is talking now. Then it says, "V'afatah, you the leader of the Seder, hakei shinav, blunt his teeth, v'emarlo, and say." Now let's read it straight without fancy twists that I can put in. Let's read it straight. V'emarlo, say to him. Okay, so I'm sitting here with 16 other people, and he's number 18, and he says, "What is this for, all you guys, you 17 guys?" So I now say back to him the following words, which God tells me to say to him, right? Emrolo, say to him. Tell you what it is. For the sake of this, Hashem did for me when I left Egypt. Now the text goes on, which could be more than I'm supposed to speak, or not, or to him, or however it goes. Leave lo, for me and not for him. Those words cannot be spoken to him. Because if I was speaking to him, I should have said, for me and not for you. You're the one I'm talking to. You're the one who put yourself outside. You cut yourself off. You wouldn't have been saved there.
So
But it doesn't say that. It says for him.
that's what I was fitting in my.
One second. So if it says for him rather than for you, then I'm not talking to him anymore. I can't be facing him and speaking to him, because then I would have to say you rather than him. So I'm talking to the other 16. I mean, see this guy over here? You heard what he said? You understand that he contradicts the fundamental principle of the Torah? And he'd been there, he wouldn't have been redeemed. Now, he refers to the person, not to what he does, not to what he looks like, but the person. He is out. He wouldn't have been. So, say you or saying him is no difference between referring to him or to what he does. It's just, but I'm not talking, it's a question of who am I talking to? Not how I'm referring, but who am I talking to? If I'm talking to him, I got to say you. If I say to him, I'm talking to the other 16, and I'm saying, see him over there? He's in trouble. Okay? And there'll be a reason for that. You wanted to say something, yeah?
I was wondering, to what Zvi brought up about what Tanya says, that if it talks about Rashayim as like nowadays, like we are considered as part of that category because we're not.
No, it's very, very hard to be a Rasha. It's not a simple thing. Ignorance can't do it. If you're victimized in some way, that can't do it. You know, it has to be thought out, and you have to know and understand and turn your back on it.
Like Haman?
Like Haman, yeah, like
If someone's going to be asked,
Sadok and Baitus and they were
Ben Navat.
Yoram ben Navat, right? These are real Rishon.
someone's going to be asked a question. Someone's asked, what does this service mean by to you? And then someone responds because Hashem redeemed me. And not you, implying you being that person that is irredeemable currently and forever so more.
That's right.
Okay, so that's why I have to say him.
No, that won't change it. Saying him just distinguishes who I'm speaking to. It doesn't distinguish what I say. In both cases, he's irredeemable. I say he couldn't, if he had been there, he wouldn't have been redeemed.
Irredeemable.
Right? The fact that I say he rather than you doesn't change the content of what I'm saying.
Okay.
Let's suppose we're in court and the jury comes in, and the jury is 13 people, and every one of them says death sentence, right? So now, I'm the judge. I could say to the defendant, you're going to die, or I could say to everybody else, he's going to die. Either way, he's going to die. My saying it to him or saying it to the rest of the people doesn't change anything. The content is death. So it seems to be. Okay. That's the Russia.
Maybe it's less embarrassing.
What's the answer?
I didn't finish all the questions yet. I told you I want to get to the list of questions. Now, Tom, the simple one. What does he say? Mazos. What is this? And you'd say to him, Hashem, with a strong hand, took us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Okay? He's a young child. He's interested. He wants to understand, and you speak to him on his level. The one who doesn't know how to ask, right? At psachlo, you open him up. You start. He doesn't ask, but don't ignore him. No. Shinemar, v'higadet levincha yom hu lemor. There's a pasuk in the Torah that says you should declare to your son on that day, Ba'avur zeh, asa Hashem li, b'seisi b'Mitzrayim. For the sake of this, Hashem did for me when I left Egypt. So, here comes Eliyahu Kitov's question. If the simple son says Mazos and he's 3 years old, and this one doesn't know how to ask, he's got to be younger than that, and you quote this verse to him and tell him this? What's going on? Furthermore, as you probably noticed, this is the same verse that we say to the wicked son. Now, why would we say to the one that doesn't know how to ask the same verse that we say to the wicked son?
It's like the tone that matters.
The tone that matters. Now here we don't say leave it low or that sort of thing, but that is part of the verse. It is part of the verse, so it's hard to say that here it means something entirely different. I suppose with your back to the wall you could say that, but it's not easy to do. Okay? So now these are the basic questions. I want to tell you what Rabbi Kitov says to get this part of it, and then all the other ones will fall out. Makito says there are 2 verses in Mishlei, Proverbs, back to back. And the 2 verses are contradictory. Bold, straight out contradictory. One is Al Ta'an Ksil Kivalto. Don't answer the fool with his foolishness, his crookedness. Pen tishve logamato, lest you be equal to him. Don't answer the fool. When you answer the fool, you will be just as foolish as he. The other verse is Anei ksil ki hivalto, answer the fool according to his crookedness. Pen yeh chacham einav, lest he be wise in his own eyes. This is absolutely contradictory advice. One says, answer the fool, and one says, don't answer the fool. So Eliyahu Kitov says, with perfect logic, obviously there have to be 2 different kinds of fools. And each one gets one of the psukim. And the 2 different kinds of the fools are these. There are fools who are so convinced of their foolishness that when they come to talk to you, they only have one button on their communication device, and that's send. They don't have any receive. They talk, and when you talk, they're sleeping. And then when you stop talking, they come out and they talk because they know you're wrong. They know what you have to say is worthless. Why listen? And they just talk more.
Can't have a conversation.
Once upon a time, I asked people to imagine such creatures, but now I don't have to say that anymore because they're all around. They're all around. They're completely positive that they're right, and you raise any question or any criticism of their views, you're a homophobe and you're a transphobe and you're a Nazi and they're just not, they're not listening. They don't want to listen. They can't listen. Okay. Then there's another kind of fool who has an idea in his head and he believes it, but he's not 100% convinced that it's right. Not 100%. There's some lingering doubt. Now, Eliyahu Kitov says, these 2 verses in Mishlei give you advice how to deal with each one. The one that's 100% sure that he's right, who isn't listening when you talk, don't answer him. Because if you do, imagine an onlooker. He sees, this guy takes a position, you answer him, he doesn't listen, his words don't respond to what you're saying, he's speaking out again, and you answer him again. So he says, this guy is an idiot because he doesn't listen and he doesn't interact with people. And you're an idiot for talking to him. Why are you talking to him for? You're not accomplishing anything. Go talk to somebody else. You'll be equating yourself to him because what you're doing is just as futile as what he's doing, because he's not listening. My Rebbe Zatzal came in contact with a married couple of missionaries. I don't know how they came to him. I wasn't there when it happened, but they showed him that they had texts that they memorized. And when they started talking to someone, they just repeated from memory these words and these ideas. And if the other guy says something else, they switch to another page, and they went on the other page. But what the other guy said made nothing to them. Don't talk to such people. But someone who has those lingering doubts, even if he doesn't open up the dialogue, you should open up a dialogue with him, because if you don't, after some period of time, he's going to say, look, I have these ideas. I wasn't sure that they were right, but no one contradicted me. No one called me on it. So they must be right. You'll drive him into certainty. You'll elevate him from the second kind of fool to the first kind of fool. Don't allow that to happen. Pen yeh chacham be'einav. If you're silent and you don't interact with him, then he will be a chacham in his own eyes, and he'll become positive that he's right. So, says Eliyahu Kitov, what we're dealing with here is this. The Russia is the first kind of fool, and the She'eni Yodei Lisho is the second kind of fool. Is that a babe of 12 months in diapers? No. She'eni Yodei Lisho means he doesn't know how to ask the way the Russia asks. The Russia knows how to get under the skin of those frummies. He knows how to make them squirm. He knows how to really get them angry. Me, because I'm not so sure, I don't have it so clear, I don't have it so positive, so I don't know how, I'm not confident, so I'm keeping quiet. But I'm watching the Russia, I look up to him, I'm convinced that he's right, but not 100% convinced, 90% convinced. That's why they get the same pasuk. They get the same pasuk because they're on the same side of the aisle, on the same side of the line. It's just that one is much more than the other. Okay, now, let's see. The first one is a chacham. What is a chacham? So in our literature, the word chacham does not apply to what in English wise means. For one thing, Rashi in several places says a chacham is someone who has learned a lot. He's received a lot from his teachers. Not someone who figures things out on his own, has his own theories and his own inventions. No, he's received from his teachers. He knows a great deal. Chazal push it even further. Ezu chacham, lo made mikol adam. Who is a chacham? Someone who learns from every person. Now, let's think about that for a minute. He learns from every person. Is that really practical? Let's suppose that you have a person who's 60 years old, and he's talking to a 16-year-old. What exactly has a 16-year-old got to teach the 60-year-old? Couldn't it be nothing? Couldn't most of what the 16-year-old believes be just foolishness?
How to use an iPad?
Yeah, that's right, maybe. When President Reagan was challenged by a younger person, you grew up with telephones, we're growing up with iPads, and President Reagan said, yeah, we gave you those iPads. What are you going to give to your children? Right? You have them because we created them. You didn't create them. Okay. Lo mikol adam, what it means in our context is this. Every person has an neshama, has a soul. And at least, in some cases, the soul is a direct expression of godliness. And even if it isn't, we're talking about Jews and non-Jews, even if it isn't, but it's something which the HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to the human being, and that human being has a position in the world, has something to accomplish in the world, it was given an injection of spirituality, which enables him to do that, and every person's position is different. Every person's challenge is different. Every person's resources are different. So yes, the 16-year-old could learn something from the 16-year-old because that 16-year-old was put into the world to do a job unlike the job of anybody else, and he's given the spiritual resources to do it. The 60-year-old could look at him and see, look at these spiritual resources. Look at how they're organized. Look at what they're oriented to do. And he can learn something from the 16-year-old that he can't learn from anybody else. Okay, now it's time for a quiz. If you've been following me, you should be able to see the logical relationship between the Chacham and the Rasha. It's not just two unrelated categories. This is not an easy question.
Wow.
Isn't tzaddik?
What's the condition of the Rasha? What did we say he was? He was the fool, which Mishlei says don't answer him. Don't answer him. Why? Because he's not listening, right? He knows so well. He thinks he knows. He's so convinced that he doesn't listen. Okay, the Chacham and the Rasha are opposites because the Chacham is 100% open and the Rasha is 100% closed. They are direct opposites. The Rasha listens to no one and the Tzaddik listens to everyone. The Chacham listens to everyone. I think in terms of Rabbi Kitov's analysis, this is a beautiful result. They're related directly. Now it comes out that the numbers 3 and 4 are weak copies of numbers 1 and 2. The Tam is open. He's open. He just hasn't got the resources to absorb most of the material that's available. He says, what is this? And you answer him. And you teach him something that's on his level to understand. And the Shenadei Elisho is also closed, but not as closed as the Rasha. He's not totally closed because he's not 100% sure. So if you talk to him, he may very well listen. So what you really have in the 4 sons is 2 and 2. And the categories are openness and closeness. And this is a key question when you're educating people. You have to know how open they are and how closed they are. And what areas they're open and closed. And as I always say, choose your battles. Somebody challenges you, don't respond with a knee-jerk spasm. Think to yourself, is he going to listen? Will he be able to hear what I have to say? If not, slough it off. If he's attacking you, be unfazed and unresponsive. It's like if somebody came up to you and said, everybody knows that 2 + 2 is 5. What's wrong with you? What would you say? What would you say? I don't think you would say anything. Have a nice day. Have a coffee. Enjoy yourself. What would you say if somebody said 2 + 2 is 5? I think you would say, this is nothing to talk about.
Whatever you want.
So that being, one of the things that the Muslims say is that we changed the text of our Tanakh because it had in it references to Muhammad, and we edited them out. Somebody says that to you, I say, have a nice day. Leave me alone. If that's what you think, I can't help you. Right? Or that the whole of Western culture is systemically racist. Have a nice day. Enjoy yourself. Leave me alone. You have to choose your battles. So, excuse me. Yes, okay, I heard you. Rise alert, fine. Yes, I heard about that also. Now, so as an educator, you need to know, and not only a professional educator, but when anybody asks you a question, when anyone starts some kind of conversation, you have to ask yourself, what can he hear and what can't he hear, and choose your subjects and your words carefully. Now, there's a couple of other things here that I want to point out. We jumped on the Rasha because he said, "Ma ha'avod azos lachem." What is this service for you? I said, for you. He's excluding himself from the group, and that's a terrible thing. Didn't the wise son also say, What are these testimonies and statutes and laws that Hashem Elokeinu commanded you? Didn't he also say you? So didn't he also exclude himself from the group? Well, why are we jumping on the Russia and applauding the Chacham? Now, in yeshivas, this is what you call a klutz kasha. It's a stupid kasha. Why? Look on the page and you'll see the answer. It's not a question of logic, it's a question of text.
Oh, he says Eschem.
That's the same as the lochem, right? Both means you rather than and he's not included.
That brings Hashem.
Look at all of what he says and ask yourself whether that speech, the speech of the Chacham, could possibly be designed to exclude him from the group.
Oh, Hashem Elokeinu.
Yeah, it says Hashem, our God. If he says our God, including himself, he can't be excluding himself from the group. That can't be. So why did he say you rather than him? The simple answer is because he's 12 years old. Therefore, he's not commanded. He's a cotton. He's not an adult. Tricky, huh? Tricky way out. Right? So therefore, he's not. The phraseology here is not at all similar to that of the Russia.
One question.
Yeah.
Could it also be like the first generation, like the first children that were born to the people that experienced the Exodus? Like, what did Hashem command you to give over to me?
It could be. It could be. The point is, once he says our God, he can't be excluding himself. Right? Now, 1 second. Yeah, now notice something else. This Russia is at the Seder. We didn't lock the door. Even the one that you don't dialogue with, because it won't be a dialogue. It'll be a monologue with pauses. That's all. He pauses while you speak, and then he goes on with his monologue. But we didn't close the door on him. We have him at the Seder. The door is open because we want contact. We want to let him know that we're not giving up on him. But dialogue when he's not listening, there's no point in that. There's absolutely no point in that. So that's... And of course, the Rosh has to be someone, as we said before, has to be knowledgeable and choosing to oppose with full knowledge of what he's doing. Now, what is this ikar, this fundamental principle that the Russia is denying?
Being part of a tzibur.
So it's not really very clear. It's not obvious. I didn't see commentaries. Of course, there are hundreds of commentaries. I didn't see all of them, but I didn't see commentaries that worried about it. But I think this point that you just made, I think this is one candidate. There may be several that are true, and that is, how do you relate to Kodesh Baruch Hu? You cannot relate to Kodesh Baruch Hu as a disconnected individual. You cannot. There's no such thing. The relationship of a Jew to Kodesh Baruch Hu is through the Jewish people. If he's not connected to the Jewish people, he can't have any relationship to the Creator. One symptom of this is the punishment called kares. Kares means being cut off from God. But every time that it says kares in the Torah, but one, it says the soul will be cut off from its people. Only once it says cut off from God. All the other times it says cut off from its people. What it means is being cut off from God, but what it says is being cut off from his people. The lesson is, if you're cut off from the people, you're cut off from God. Ipso facto. We've mentioned in the Shirim on Tefillah that all the prayers are in the plural. You stand before the Kodesh Baruch Hu to plead on behalf of the Jewish people. Yes, you're there. Yes, you can add yourself in as one of those Jews who you've been pleading for, but you don't go with singular. Do for me. You go for us. Do for us. The perception of yourself as a citizen in an am, in a nation, in a people, is crucial for your ability to connect with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Yeah.
Is Am also referring, like when the Ramchal talks about the perfected community in Olam Haba. Is that also referred to?
He never uses the word "am" there. He says kibbutz hashleimim. Says it several times. The gathering of the perfected.
That wouldn't be the whole Jewish people, or the ones that make it to Olam Haba.
Yeah, it would.
So like in a way, like being cut off from the Jewish people, like it would be like not being included in that.
That's very nice. Gee, that's nice. I didn't think of that. That's very nice. The place in Olam Haba is for the collection of the perfected. It's not that each person gets his own. It's the collection of the perfected. I think it's a very nice idea. I'll tell you the way I explain it fits your idea, but I didn't think of making your application. It bothered me for years. What is this kibbutz? The kibbutz is a failed socialist farming settlement in America where they're all bankrupt and the government has to bail them out. Masha'en came the ones which are not socialist. They're doing okay, but the socialist ones failed miserably. What do we need that for in our Olam Haba? Here's there's a lot more here, but I'll just give you the headline. The other question that people ask is, if Adam failed in Gan Eden, okay, what about me? Give me my own Gan Eden. Give me my own Garden of Eden. Give me a tree and let me try the test and see if I fail. Why must I live out the consequences of his failure? The whole world became degraded, and the answer is because every human being is a slice of Adam's soul. Every human soul is a slice of Adam's soul, and that means that we were all there. All of us were there, and all of us participated in his decision. So we are all living out the results of our own participation in his decision. Okay. That means, as you put it, when the person goes through life and he has a successful career, and he's going to go to Olam Haba, you want to reconstitute that original soul. It originally was one. We're slices of that one. It could have, the end of history could have been without slices. If Adam had passed his test, history would have ended then. So what you want to do is we see the slicing as an artifact of the result of his sin, and then we want to reconstitute the original by putting it back together. That, I think, is at least one part of the idea. Now, you're saying, that's where you are. If you're there, part of the reconstituted soul. If you're not part of it, you're not going to be there, because that's what it is. I think that's 100% right. It's another ride to the same idea. Very good thought. Yeah.
No.
Okay. So that's one slice of the four sons, one slice out of 500, and you can ask other people. You'll get other pshatim, which will be equally true or better, and that's what I have to say about the four sons.